Hi, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to join our session. Today, this is the office hour with a topic presenting hybrid data lake architecture with Presto and Spark in the cloud, accessing on-prem storage. So today's office hour is hosted by me and Adit. We're both core developers for Alluxio. And before we start, I just want to mention that we will start this session with a short intro and presentation, about 10 to 15 minutes, presenting the topic I mentioned. And then we will just go to the second phase, which is online office hour, in case you have any questions related to Alluxio or even in the ecosystem. We're happy to discuss. So this is just a very flexible forum to have our users sitting together discuss issues they see with us. And I already added most of the registrars to our Slack channel. You should receive an email in your inbox registering you from your email to our community Slack channel. And for all the Q&A, if you think you need something, you give some links or something, you want to type it in, feel free to use Slack to communicate with us. Without further ado, we have Adit here presenting hybrid data lake architecture with Presto and Spark in the cloud accessing on-prem storage. Adit, it's all yours.
Hi, good morning, Ben. Thanks everyone for attending. Today, I'll briefly touch upon an architecture for running Alluxio in a public cloud with frameworks like Presto and Spark, while you access your data on premises, which could reside in systems like HDFS or Hive. So I'm assuming most of you are familiar with the Luxio story, so I won't spend a lot of time on this. It's an open source project established a few years back, and we like to say that our goal is to orchestrate data for hybrid and multi-cloud as well. And I'll touch upon what I mean by data orchestration and how we define hybrid cloud itself. Yeah, I won't spend time on this. Quickly flashing the screen, you might know that Luxio is being used in a variety of industries, and the hybrid cloud use case that I'm talking about today is especially common in the financial services industry, where we see users wanting to keep a lot of their data on premises while leverage compute in the cloud without moving the data to a public cloud itself. Now, a quick refresher on where Alluxio sits in the software stack. Alluxio is the layer which in the middle, which sits between different compute engines like Presto and Spark, and different storage systems like Amazon S3, Azure cloud storages, and even on-prem object stores and on-prem HDFS or NFS systems. Now, Alluxio is a framework that you can interact with using a different interfaces, something we call northbound interfaces for Alluxio. For Presto and Spark, these applications would typically interact with Alluxio using the HDFS file system interface. For some of our machine learning use cases, which are used TensorFlow and PyTorch, a fuse interface is a common way of interacting with Luxio as a system. Now, Luxio sits in the middle of compute and storage, like I said, and on the southbound side, Luxio uses these different drivers that I have on the screen to interact with a lot of the storage systems on the south. Now, what does having a layer of Alluxio in the middle actually do for your system? We have a few simple use cases that we've seen our users, our customers start using Alluxio with, and after they use Alluxio with these simple use cases, it is not uncommon for them to realize even more benefit from Alluxio. The use case that I'm going to focus on today is the one which is on the left-hand side of this picture, in which we see Alluxio being deployed in a public cloud And the frameworks that I'm going to talk about co-located with Alluxio in the public cloud are Spark and Presto for data analytics workloads. And while we access Alluxio as Alluxio, we access data residing on premises to enable analytics in a public cloud without moving the data first. And this is something that we refer to as a burst to cloud use case. And this is one example of a hybrid cloud use case with Alluxio. Now, even though I won't focus on the other use cases for Alluxio, we do have many different use cases as well. Alluxio can be deployed, like I said, on premises or in a public cloud. The one in the middle is also an example of Alluxio being deployed in a public cloud. The deployment themselves could be managed Hadoop services, they could be Kubernetes services, and we do support different deployment models as well. The one in which Alluxio is deployed co-located with the compute in the cloud and accessing data in the cloud itself is something that we refer to as a single cloud or a cloud native use case. And the use of Alluxio for this scenario is that once the data resides in a public cloud itself, we guarantee SLAs much better than you would when accessing data accessing data from cloud storage itself. And even more than that, what we do is that you significantly save on the cost of accessing storage in a public cloud. And we've seen infrastructure costs go down by as much as half for people using Alluxio in this scenario as well. And the third use case is somewhat of a traditional use case for Alluxio before our customers move to a public cloud. A lot of our customers started by deploying Presto and Spark-based applications on premises to accelerate data access over on-prem object stores, which have certain issues that we are all familiar with, listing latencies, a copy or a rename acting as a copy, and like these are different use cases that Alluxio interacts with. And if you notice, a lot of the things that I've talked about right now in the simple use cases is focusing on Alluxio as a layer, which the first thing that Alluxio does is act as a distributed file system, as a distributed cache for remote storage. And in the rest of the talk, I'm going to mention a few more capabilities of Alluxio, and those are some of the reasons that we see our customers using Alluxio to begin with in the hybrid, in the burst to cloud scenario that I'm describing today. Yeah, to start off with some context, why does anyone want to burst to the cloud? Now, what we are seeing is that on-premise deployments are struggling, both in terms of the total cost of ownership for the infrastructure and also the management pain that is there. With an inflexible tool set, certain versions that are there, which it's not easy to upgrade versions, and it's not easy to scale or provision infrastructure on demand either. Now, all of these things are something that are easy to obtain in a public cloud, like on-demand provisioning of resources, elastic resources for bursty workloads, and choosing just the right tool, just the right cloud-native tool set for the job or the problem that you have. Now, while it is easy to use a public cloud, keeping the cost in control for large deployments in a public cloud may be challenging itself. And another concern that we've seen for some of our customers is the desire to not be locked into a single cloud. And one way of getting locked into a cloud is by moving all your data to a public cloud. And this is something that is sticky. Like the data that was previously residing in HDFS or Hive on premises Hive being for structured metadata, table definitions on HDFS itself. Once all of this is moved to a public cloud, that makes a public cloud more sticky. And to prevent the stickiness or to be more flexible, we've seen our customers go with the burst to cloud approach that I'm briefly outlining today. Now, like I said, like a complete shift may be risky. It may be expensive as well. Some of our customers are dealing with petabytes of data, and in addition to that, security regulations is another reason why we've seen people not move their data. So Alluxio has capabilities in which you have tight control over the life cycle of the data in a public cloud itself. Like even if it's being temporarily moved to a public cloud, you have tight control using policies or configuration in Alluxio, controlling how long does that data live in public cloud before being wiped out from the public cloud itself. So regulations is another reason why cloud migration is challenging compared to the naive approach of just copying data from on-premises to a public cloud. Quickly contrasting a few competing solutions. So to say, one is to lift all of your infrastructure on premises and run it in a cloud. This is something that's called lift and shift. The second approach is to start migrating workloads incrementally. So if you have like data ingestion, collection and ingestion on premises and ETL on premises, and some analytics that is working on top of processed data, the second and the third picture, the solution that we're talking about today is where you can start migrating only the analytics phase to begin with. You can have your ETL on premises while you run analytics in the cloud. And and the challenge there with the middle approach is that, let's say the ETL phase is constantly mutating the data on premises, keeping it in sync with the public cloud when either writes occur in the public cloud or on premises. It is a challenge with a simple copy-based migration to a public cloud. Even if you want to migrate incrementally using workloads, identifying what data sets the workload that you're migrating would target is an additional problem that is solved by the compute-driven caching-based approach, which is the closest to the Luxio approach that I'm talking about today, in which you simply launch an application in the public cloud without migrating any data first, and data is cached on access or based on certain policies from the on-premise storage into a public cloud. These are things that I've already mentioned briefly, but what we're trying to do is what the solution that we provide with the Luxio. The whole goal is to accelerate your journey from a completely on-premises environment to start adopting compute in the cloud as a first step. And in the whole data pipeline, the first step that we've seen people start with is migrating the analytic workloads first, before moving ETL or other stages of the data pipeline itself. And the security is another aspect that we pay close attention to. Yeah, that's the last slide that I'm going to play out and is the crux of the solution that I've defined. And this is where we start off with a situation in which we have on-premises, HDFS, and Hive with the data and the metadata definitions, but the cluster is becoming hard to maintain and is typically compute bound. And by that, what I mean is that it's running out of CPU resources for performing analytics on top of a busy data lake. Now, there could be a couple of approaches, like I said before. Now, once you have a cloud provider like GCP, where you're running Presto or Spark, if you access the data directly over a WAN, so this is prohibitively slow. So the high latency and low bandwidth just makes this kind of analytics infeasible. Now, the second approach is when you have when you copy data into the cloud. And this was the middle approach in a couple of slides back, if you remember. And data synchronization is a problem. Now, the Alluxio-based solution is where you have Alluxio co-located with the framework, and as soon as your compute cluster comes up, you don't need to migrate any data first. Now, data is migrated incrementally based on the caching aspect of it, of the Luxio system, and also based on certain migration policies that I'm going to talk about in a second. Now, what gets moved to the cloud is only the working set, and it's at the granularity of, like, say, the blocks that you're accessing, and not entire objects or files that your application is accessing itself. So what you get out of this is local performance. The data appears local to compute running across a data center or that data that's being accessed in a public cloud and resided on premises. And any synchronization of changes that happen are handled by Luxio, and this is bidirectional itself. So like I said, if the ETL jobs on premises mutate data on premises, which is being accessed using Luxio in the public cloud, the synchronization happens on its own so that you still get a consistent cache for both data and metadata in a public cloud with Luxio. The second step that we see in this journey is migration of data using policies. And we have certain policies, like the example that I have listed here is that you can say that data which is created in the last 7 days, I want to migrate that to GCS or any cloud storage itself. So this is another way in which we see Alluxio being used for this use case. So when data is being accessed via Alluxio, you're kind of tiering the data sources itself. So in this example that I have, if the data resides on Alluxio managed storage, and this is storage that Alluxio uses for caching on the compute itself, then on the compute cluster itself, this could be memory, SSDs, or hard disk drives, then that's the first data source. If it does not reside there, then Alluxio would go that, okay, cloud storage is closer to me, let me see if the data is there. If the data is not there either, then Alluxio would go to the far away on-premise storage to fetch that data itself. And similarly for the write path, we have different policies which control the data flow itself. With that, that's pretty much all I wanted to outline for the talk today. I just wanted to highlight a partnership that we announced with Google not so long ago. It's been a couple of months now, and they are recommending Alluxio as a data lake partner, specifically for the burst use case that I talked about. And using Alluxio in Google, specifically using Dataproc, is simpler than it has been in the past. But Dataproc is not the only way you can use Alluxio in Google Cloud. Like I said, we have other deployment options as well. Quickly touching upon a case study for something like this. Walmart is an example of a customer that has gone down this route, and they started with their Hadoop and Hive data on premises, and they used Presto in a public cloud. And like I said, Presto and Spark are common analytics frameworks that we see using Alluxio, people using Alluxio with. But like I said, there are other use cases for Luxio spanning the machine learning realm as well. So these are some of the benefits that were realized, and I've kind of talked about this generically, but these are all benefits that Walmart did realize with Alluxio deploying this for their platform. The simple, just flashing the architectural competence in case something sparks your interest. But this is how it looked like. On-premises changes were picked up by Luxio, both on the data side on HDFS and also on the metadata side. with Hive that the data, there was only one view of the data, metadata, I mean, in Hive that you did not need to worry about synchronization. And that's at a very, very high level what the solution with the Luxio looks like. In terms of performance over remote access, what we saw was at least a couple of X on average, 2X performance gains on average, and even higher with higher concurrency in Presto while accessing data on premises. With that, that's all I had planned to talk about. That was a very quick overview. Thanks for listening in. I'm happy to take any questions about this topic or any topic in general that you would like to talk to Ben or me about today.
Yeah, just as a reminder, this is office hour for us. In case you have any questions, feel free to type in the questions. You will find a question chat box there on your right in the control panel, or you can go to our Slack channel and ask a question there. Well, before we have any questions, let me ask you, Adit, is there any, for example, any future plan, anything with Alluxio? I know on your side, you're in charge of a lot of the hybrids related efforts. Any particular problem or any improvements you're looking at right now as the next
Yes, so one of the things that we're looking at for what I've for related to what I've talked about right now is we've observed that setting up a complex environment, a complex hybrid cloud environment is not easy. And we are coming up with something, as you know, something called the Data Orchestration Hub, which is going to be released with our next release, alongside our next release, which is going to make it easy to manage an Alluxio cluster along with the computes that it's being deployed with. So that is something that we are working on to reduce the management overhead of this with this whole solution that we talked about.
Cool. Okay. Well, in case we don't have any more questions, we can call it a day, or you can just always go to our Slack channel to ping us. All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.